Good. So, good morning, everyone. I'm sure you have heard a lot about how to formulate biologics, how to manufacture them. So, with my presentation, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the patient perspective because that's something that we usually forget about when we are formulating new drug products. So, I want you to give you that perspective because I've done a lot of work on that. And it's really, your mindset really changes when you have that understanding, especially when you're working within the pharmaceutical industry and working on development and manufacturing at the commercial scale. So with this, I want to also bring it to you that from the patient perspective going forward, at least in my perspective, the future looks bright. So let's hope that's the case. So I think you're all aware of patient-centric drug product design that has become very trendy in the past couple of years. So patient-centric drug product design is the process of identifying the comprehensive needs of the target patient population and using that knowledge and understanding to develop adequate drug products that can increase the benefit of the treatment to the patients. So how can we perceive this patient centricity model within healthcare provision? So as you can see in the image, the patient is always at the center. And by doing this, he can build adequate relationships with the different health care providers involved in his provision, so that the needs of the patient are identified, and in this sense, the patient also has an active voice in selecting the most appropriate treatment for their individual cases. So in this sense, the patient will have an active voice, and he will feel empowered to accept the treatment that was provided to him. And in a sense, this will also increase the efficacy of the prescribed treatments, and therefore reducing healthcare costs for the entities. So I really like this sentence, and I read this in an article from, it was an interview from a person that was working in pharmaceutical industry. So he said, you can deliver tomorrow's innovation if you are using still yesterday's business models. And unfortunately, this is true for the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical business model has been stagnated over the years. Of course, there are several factors contributing for that. One of them is the highly regulated environment that we live in. It's very difficult to bring innovation. Of course, innovation can be brought, but it takes many years and a lot of efforts to bring it online. So that is one of the issues that we have. And another issue is that we need to change our mindset, how we perceive development and how to use it appropriately from a patient perspective. So with regards to the pharma, the first one is with regards to the pharma pipelines, we look first into patient. We should look first to the patient instead of looking to the benefit or to the profit that the company will get. So and with this regard, if we think about the patient first, instead of thinking about the return on investment that the company will have with that particular therapy that is being developed, then we are ensuring that the drug product that is being developed is really being targeting the needs of the patients, and because the focus is there and is not so much on the profit. The second one is the contribution of the patients in clinical trials. So there's still, like, in my view, companies or the pharmaceutical industries, the contribution is the patient, is for them to understand, okay, what is the health and the safety, the benefits of the drug that is being tested. However, the patient is more than that. The patient can be a partner, because with the experience of the patient while going through those clinical trials and experiencing the drug product that is being developed, the companies can use the feedback from the patient in order to optimize that drug product, so that in the end it can really fit the purpose and the needs of the target patient population. So I also think that going forward, we'll starting to have patient-centric clinical trials. There's already some work being done on that recently, and now we are having the companies are deploying a lot of digital technology. And I think those two combined will also support patient centricity going forward. So I just want to give you now an overview of the regulatory efforts that have been done over the years. this started back in 2009 with the revision of the ICH Q8 guideline, which stated that the product should be designed to meet the patient needs. So this comes in line with the patient centricity mindset. Then in 2013, we have a new EMA guideline that was focusing on the appropriate development for pediatric medicines, in which here they are emphasizing that maybe we should skip or transit from liquid medicines because they have really stability issues. They lead to a lot of administration errors, and focus more on maybe solid oral dosage forms, which are stable and the dose is fixed. And this led then to the development of a lot of mini tablet formulations, and there are a lot of clinical studies now with mini tablets also targeting pediatric populations. Then the same proceedings were applied to the geriatric population, because this population, geriatrics, they are not adults anymore, so their physiology is different. For example, they have a lot of swallowing issues because the swallowing function deteriorates with age. And of course, doctors will prescribe solid oral dosage forms because that is the most convenient drug product to be prescribed. But yeah, they don't consider then that the patient might have issues to swallow. Then they will go to the home setting. They'll either crush or split the tablet, make it easier to swallow. And then if we have controlled release formulation, for example, the patient might run into issues. So this guideline was also reflecting those guidances. And going forward, maybe we'll also have some patient-centric regulations for biopharmaceutics and biologic medicine. So the consumer industry is a good example of how to implement a patient-centric approach into the product. So the consumer is, of course, engaged very early into the development process, and this should be also done for the pharmaceutical industry or whenever a new program is being developed. And their so-called clinical trials for the consumer industry is the market research that they do with the population, trying to understand how they should develop the product. So they focus in three main key points: how the product is appropriate for the target audience, how will they use it, and what is their perception. And with all this information that they obtain from the market research conducted, they can really design the product to meet the needs of the consumer industry. And the mobile phone is a good example of it. If we see the improvements of it from 1973, when the first Motorola was launched, into nowadays that we have smartphones that we can do everything with it. And if you look at it, even old people can also use it because it's very intuitive. So this is a good example of a patient-centric approach. So I came across this publication, I think 3 weeks ago, and I was really happy to see it. Finally, we're getting some progress in implementing patient-centric development into the pharmaceutical industry. So this guideline was published. It's from this year, of course, and it is stating patient involvement in the development, regulation, and safe use of medicines. And I just want to give just to go through it very quickly. So there are many key points that are being discussed there. So in the introduction, they are discussing the opportunities to incorporate patient perspective, which is very important, and also increasing their engagement for the development of the drug products. In the chapter 2 landscape, they are discussing opportunities to engage the patients and also patient centricity in the development of medicines. In chapter 3, patient's voice is vital. This is very critical to ensure that we are considering the patient perspective into the drug development process. The patient's knowledge and credibility, the training of the stakeholders also to engage the patients into the different activities. And this is also very critical, open communication between the patient and the stakeholders, because the patient needs, of course, to feel comfortable within that clinical setting to speak openly with the stakeholders. In chapter 4, many other aspects, identifying the unmet needs for the patients, their engagement in preclinical and early clinical development. This is also very important because then we ensure that really from the start we are considering the patient perspective and using that knowledge to design the drug product, how to engage the patient, and what would be their preferences for the studies, and also how to really generate the real world data that can be used for the future. having the patient perspective in consideration. So I'm sure you heard a lot about biologics. I will not spend too much time explaining what they are and what they do. So they entered the market around 30 years ago, and they paved their way into patient care. They, of course, support patients with the defected human genes or proteins. And they're very important, of course, during healthcare provision because they help to treat rare diseases or fight life-threatening diseases. And of course, we have different types of biologics. So I'll mostly focus on vaccines and proteins and peptides because my talk will not focus so much about IV delivery or subcutaneous delivery. I'll try to emphasize more the other routes that are being nowadays very interesting for the pharmaceutical industry, and there are actually a lot of clinical trials going on. So when you look about the amount of biologic drug products that have been approved in the past years, there have been about more than 300 molecules in the market that were approved by FDA. And if you look into the market share, it's really huge. I mean, this is data from 2018, so it's not very recent anyways, but just so to give you an understanding of how much money is involved with the biologic therapies. And this is the revenue from 2018. And you can see for Humira, this was a big hit in the market when it came. There was around $20 billion. And all the other therapies were around $6 billion. So there's a lot of money here. And going forward, for sure that biologic drug products will continue to have significant market share. And especially now we are talking a lot about biosimilars, so that will come also into play. So let's talk about now routes of administration, and regarding patient centricity, what would be the best route considering the patient's needs and all the challenges that we have with formulating biologic drug products. So as we all are aware, majority are still delivered nowadays via IV or subcutaneous injections, because formulation-wise, the molecules are more difficult to formulate as compared to small molecules. We have issues of stability and the degradation. So that makes it the delivery is still very challenging via alternative routes. So there's a growing interest from pharma to try to change the way that biologic drugs are delivered into the human body. And of course, the ideal case would be to achieve patient centricity also for biologics, which will then would resonate to independent use administration in the patient's home setting. So now I'll just go very quickly through the different routes of administration. I will not also just give a high level of review about formulation strategies, what would be the benefits, challenges of it, and what I really want to focus is on the patient perspective for each one of them. So regarding the IV route of administration for biologics, there are different formulation strategies. We can use bolus injections. We can use continuous infusion. This is very adequate for drugs with low bioavailability, for molecules that are sensible to the GI tract. And with the pegylation of proteins also, we could achieve more patient compliance because we could reduce the dosing frequency for the injectables. So what are the benefits of the IV route? So it bypasses the metabolic pathways. We can increase the bioavailability of poorly soluble drugs. It has a rapid onset of action, and the dose can be flexible, of course, with the support from the healthcare providers. Now, patient perspective, and this is where I want to emphasize. So this route is mostly adequate for patients who are in the hospital setting, who are staying there. For patients who live in the home setting, they need to go to the hospital to get their treatment, so this is not very convenient. It requires trained personnel, meaning the patient cannot do it himself. It causes discomfort because it involves injecting material, of course, and needles, and there's also higher costs usually for these therapies. And what I really want to emphasize is these two pictures, because this is really what happens. The patient needs to go to the healthcare provider in order to obtain the therapy. And of course, from a patient centricity point of view, this is not what we want to achieve. Not talking about, of course, all the benefits that the therapy brings to the patient. No, that is obvious. So moving on to subcutaneous, regarding formulation strategies, depending on the molecular weight of the molecule, the absorption can be different. It can be, if it's lower than 16K Dalton, it goes through the blood capillaries. If it's higher, it goes to the lymphatic vessels. Even though that the mechanism inherent to how the drug behaves within the lymphatic vessels is not yet understood, but we have this knowledge. Also suitable for drugs with low bioavailability and also GI sensitive drugs. Benefits of it. So we can increase the bioavailability of the drug. Some challenges are related to the injection volume and viscosity. This is one of the limitations. So in terms of injection volume, usually you can get 1.5 ml. And then if you want to increase the concentration of for example, the protein, that will lead to a higher viscosity, which then will create pain on the injection site for the patient. There is patient variability with regards to the thickness of the stratum corneum, and also the molecule size is also a constraint for administration transdermally, subcutaneous. Sorry. Now, patient perspective. Benefits: it allows self-administration, meaning that the patient can be at home, minding his own business and doing the therapy at the same time. Patient compliance is highly increased. There's more cost effectiveness, but still as a disadvantage, there's still some pain, discomfort. But for example, for patients who have to do this therapy on a daily basis, this no longer becomes an issue because it really becomes part of their lifestyle. So when you talk about subcutaneous delivery, we all think about insulin, and this is just an overview of how delivery of insulin has evolved over the years. I mean, it started back in 1922 with the bulky syringe, very old one, and then we have progressed to more innovative administration pans. So just here very quickly, in 1985, we had the first reusable pen. Then in 1999, we had the first pre-filled pen with insulin. 1992, we could start resetting the insulin dose. 1999, you could start incrementing the dose that was going to be administered with 0.5 units. And then 2007, first pen with memory. 2010, more and more features added. And then what I really want to emphasize is 2017, we had the first smart insulin pen, which is here on the image. And in my perspective, this is a really good example of patient centricity, because first, you can do everything in your home setting, and then you become less dependent on the advices from your healthcare providers, meaning you can skip follow-up consultations, because then you have the device directly connected to your smartphone, and the smartphone, you can track everything there, and the smartphone even can give you indications on what to do next. So really here we can see the evolution of patient-centric drug product device design with regards to the insulin pens and all the features that have been added over the years to ensure that from the patient perspective, all the needs can be met. This is just a video with the. Can you run the video? Oh no. Oh. Okay, you cannot run it. Yeah, I should start when I put next. Okay, yeah, it was just explaining all the features of the pen and how they could help the patient. But anyways, I have a resume here. So the pen is reusable for 1 year, no charging needed. So this gives a lot of time for the patient. Keeps track of the active insulin, reminds the patient to dose, which is very important. The patient usually forgets about it. It automatically logs the doses administered into the phone, so the patient can keep better track in case he forgets, okay, did I administer it already today? Did I not? So he can just go to the smartphone and check it out. It also integrates with the glucose meters, so that the information is all centered in one place. And this is what I'm trying to make, this is what I was stating before. It also helps the patient to make decisions based on the data that it's being given to the app. So it can also recommend a personalized dose based on the parameters that the patient has at certain time, with regards to blood glucose, carbohydrates that he's ingesting in his diet, or active insulin. So, in my perspective, this really has a patient-centric seal of approval. This device, and I hope we can use the same technology for other drugs that are currently being administered via subcutaneous injection. So talking about transdermal route of administration for biologics. So regarding formulation strategies, it's only applicable to molecules with a molecular weight lower than 500K. Some physical technologies that are used involving autopherases, which is like you put the device, I'm sure you're all aware of it, you put the device against the skin with some electric charge, then it opens the pores so that the drug can permeate easier. So the formulations usually involve permeation enhancers, of course, and there are a lot of formulations developed with nanocarriers, liposomes, nanoparticles, etc. There's microneedles have been very trendy recently as a delivery route also for transdermal, and this could be also applicable to gastrointestinal sensible drugs. So benefits and challenge. Bioavailability is a benefit. First pass metabolism is a benefit because you're avoiding it. Posology is a benefit. So in terms of administration, the patient just leaves the patch there for 1 month, 2 months, and doesn't need to worry about it. So in terms of patient compliance, that is very good. There is patient variability also with regards to the thickness of the stratum corneum, and faucet delivery also. So this is a benefit because with the patch you have controlled release, continuous controlled release of the drug, and the patient doesn't rely on it so much. So from the patient perspective, patient can do it himself. So no doctor appointments required for this. Patient compliance is increased also. It's a non-invasive administration as compared to IV and subcutaneous. And the dosing frequency is also improved because the patch can last 1 month usually. So there's a lot of clinical studies now going on with microneedles. So maybe in the future we'll see also many patches for delivery of biologic molecules. So depending on the type of microneedle used, you can address different molecular weights, which is good. So this doesn't become so much a limitation. So yeah, lot of things happening here also, and hopefully we'll see more products on the market. So pulmonary route is another route that has been trendy for many years, and I have a funny example to share with you, and I'm sure you're all aware of it. So with regards to formulation strategies, the physiochemical stability of the particles is really a struggle. Molecular size and molecular shape are also very important and limits the formulation. So you need to do a lot of particle engineering to ensure that you have the desired shape for suitable inhalation, and also the desired size. Usually is from 1 to 5 microns. The particle size, to ensure that the particles can be delivered to the lower portion of the lungs. The inhalation device is also very critical from a patient perspective, and I think this is something that sometimes the companies don't put so much emphasis into it because they are so worried about the formulation and ensuring that the formulation is really delivered to the lungs. And this, of course, this route can also be applicable for drugs which are sensible to the GI tract. So the benefits of it, bioavailability. So there's a big contact area in the lungs that can be used for delivery of drugs. So that is a benefit. We also surpassed the first pass metabolism. So these struggles is there's of course the lung defense mechanism that might reject the inhaled particles, and patient variability, of course, in the airways. There's always some variability there. From a patient perspective, lots of benefits here as compared to previous. This allows self-administration in our home setting, patient compliance. It's a non-invasive route. However, there are some struggles also. Usually the inhalation route brings a lot of administration errors due to the manual handling of it. And also device size portability is also a very important aspect for the patients because they need to carry their pump, their inhaler with them wherever they go. So this is also critical from a patient perspective and something that I think sometimes companies don't really consider it, and I'll give a good example of it. So I just want to point out now, okay. What does the data show with regards to inhalation from a patient perspective? So when we think about delivery of drugs to the lungs using inhaler devices, patients still struggle to do that. And in practice, the administration rate of errors is really high. So I'll just give you here an example. This is related to a patient that was used to use one device and switch to another device. And you can see that there's so blue bar, unsuccessful delivery, middle bar, the orange one, partial successful delivery, and the gray one, successful delivery. And you can see that when you switch, then when the patient were switching from one device to the other, there was a higher rate of unsuccessful delivery. So that means that, of course, because with the inhalation of viruses, there's always a learning process on how to use the device. There should be a higher amount of usability studies, which I think currently is not yet done to a significant extent. So that is really something that we should consider. Here is just a comparison between different mechanisms for the inhalers. So we are all aware that dry powder inhalers, the mechanism of action is just triggered by the patient when he inhales the product after, of course, breaking the capsule or depending on the other type. And so the administration rates are usually higher for MDIs because there's a dual mechanism. The patient needs to activate the device and inhale. So there's more patient variability there. So we also expect to have a higher administration errors rate. This is just another study which over a 40-year period, they were just assessing how was the administration technique conducted by the patients. And you can see that for all of it is a flat line, either if it's correct, acceptable, or poor. So with this, I just want to say, from the moment that the patient starts to use a device, he will always use it the same way. Of course, if you don't emphasize usability studies, which is something I mentioned that can be done more, and training is very important. I think training should be done to patients to teach them how to properly use inhalation devices. And this study, I think it emphasizes that there's more things that we can do to ensure that patients know how to use our devices, and to ensure that, of course, then the therapy is effective. Recently, there were some regulatory proceedings, and now companies really need to show that the patient knows how to use the device in order to have the market approval. So that's a good step forward to ensure that patients just know how to use the device. I have here another video. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Probably doesn't work also, but it's okay. It's just, you know it, yeah. It was perfume rather than an inhaler device. So yeah, just to point out that we automatically assume that patients know how to use the devices, but in the real case scenario, that's not really true. So do you know Exubera? Are you familiar with it? Okay, good. So this was a really a big wow factor when it came to the market. A lot of expectations on it. So this was the first human insulin product for inhalation. Particles had between 1 to 5 millimeters. So in terms of pharmaceutical point of view, this is a huge technological achievement. They are able to stabilize the insulin molecule to make it bioavailable in a dry powder form. And it was the first product when it came to the market, insulin product in 2006 that could be administered via inhalation. So this was really a huge innovation at that time. There are a lot of expectations from the healthcare providers and from the patients also. And this was expected to be a huge hit with lots of profits for Pfizer, but in the end, that was not the case. And so the estimated annual sales during launch was to be from 1 billion to 4 billion annually. And then they only did 12 million the first 9 months of 2007. So my question here is what happened? Many say that this was a bad strategy from Pfizer. Others say other aspects, but in my perspective, it's clear what was the issue. And I think the picture shows it. I mean, look at this device. So bulky, huge in size. And like I mentioned before, this is something that the patient needs to carry with him wherever he goes to conduct his therapy, either at the work setting or whenever traveling. So in my perspective, this was the main reason why the product was then recalled and taken out of the market, because from a patient administration perspective, this device really does not meet the needs of the patient. And this is the perfect example of what I was trying to mention. From a technological point of view, this was huge. Pfizer was able to really formulate insulin in dry particle forms that could be inhaled. So that is amazing, but then they focused so much on the formulation side and forgot about the device part. And then that's the outcome you get, because if you forget about the patient side of the relationship, then you will not have profit with it. So when we talk about oral delivery of biologics, I think the same thought comes into all of us, which is this one. Everyone is trying to grab the holy grail. However, also there have been some developments on it. There's quite a bunch of clinical trials also happening now. One big stakeholder working on this is Novo Nordisk, and I'll give an example later on. So in terms of oral administration of biologics, what are the formulation strategies involved? I mean, there are different ones. So you can either apply mucoadhesive polymers to ensure that the contact time of the molecule in the delivery area is higher in the intestine. You can also use cyclodextrins to complexate the molecules, the biologic molecules. But mostly are these two strategies here. You mostly use permeation enhancers to ensure that you get more bioavailability. And also you use the gradient inhibitors to ensure that the biologic molecule is able to go through the GI tract without losing the activity and not degrading, of course. So what are the challenges here? First pass metabolism, of course, we cannot avoid it. Permeation due to the high size of the molecules to pass through the intestinal epithelia. Degradation due to the pH, acidity of the GI tract. So bioavailability here is definitely an issue. You really need to stabilize the drug in a way that it can be delivered. So for GI sensible drugs, this is really a challenge. But from a patient perspective, this is really would be the best option. Of course, oral solid dosage forms are the best therapy from a patient's perspective. They allow self-administration. Patient acceptability is really high. They are non-invasive. They can do it in a home setting or wherever they are. And in terms of stability and shelf life, they are usually pretty good, of course. They're very stable, and shelf life is usually minimum 2 years. So really good with regards to those aspects. So I mentioned Novo Nordisk. So they had an oral protein that was recently approved by FDA in 2019 for treatment of diabetes. If the biologic molecule is semaglutide. Then it was approved also by EMA for the European markets in 2020. The commercial form is Rybelsus. And this is a game changer. So there are still articles on the internet like chasing the holy grail for all oral biologics, but I think Novo Nordisk is already one step ahead. And they continue to do a lot of work on it. So they have this successful case, and they are working also with another molecule to also deliver orally. When they are not capable of doing via tablets or formulation form, they also doing research on medical devices to be administered orally to ensure that this becomes a reality in the future. So this is why I think future looks bright for patients because we'll have many more of these products going forward. So in summary, and of course, I'll put the patient in the spotlight here. We should definitely use the patient experience to design drug products that help us to refine and reframe the product statement, help us to establish suitable product designs for the target patient population based on their needs. And it also helps us to understand the value of repeated studies, usability studies, because it's a two-way interaction. We can do the study with the patient can give the feedback, and then we can redesign the product and repeat it to see what is the benefit of it. So going forward, regards to biologics, so I hope there will be a lot of patient centricity. Of course, digital healthcare is already involved in it. Maybe artificial intelligence also will come and have a play on it. Companies are starting to do also developments on that. Lots of formulation science, of course, but most importantly, I think, or I'm hoping for having these three main routes of the administration for biologics in the future on the market, so that really patients can benefit from it from their home care setting or wherever they are. So inhalation devices, also digital inhalers that can be connected directly to your phone, and you can monitor or track how the therapy is going. We already have the case for the smart pen for insulin and subcutaneous administration. And for the future, I'm hoping to see a lot of oral drug therapies also for biologics. Just to finalize, these are my own expressions and opinions. And not the ones of the company that I'm representing. So just a disclaimer. I want to make that clear to you, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Any questions?
A comment about Exubera. So this was actually well patient-centric because the decision was to bring it on the market even though the device was not because it was intended for patients with fear of needles or injection. But those patients, the idea of a new administration, even though the device was not masked. It was for children. So it was a little bit different than
yeah, but if you think about it, I mean,
it was clear. It was the decision made that they want to either to further develop the device or be fast on the market, bring benefit to those patients. It was the wrong decision.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was not that nobody cared about the.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think what I said still stands, but what I was trying to point out is about the device. And in the end, it didn't work out because of the decisions that the company made, because when you think about, I mean, especially insulin, like even injectables, I mean, that is something that patients really do from the beginning. Even kids start doing it, and then it becomes part of their daily routine. So I think, for example, this therapy would be more applicable, or would be maybe more successful if this was like the first option that was on the market, But for patients that are already used to needles and everything, or even that, okay, they're fear of needles, children, but then the percentage of the target is low. And that is the reason maybe why the sales were so low,
But
So
there's still a portion of patients that, right?
yeah, I know, yeah, definitely, yeah.
And the other one is about, very careful because it's the lungs, the effect of the product change has an impact. This is acceptable if lung not acceptable.
Systemic, yeah. I think there's already a product on the market for cystic fibrosis with the biologic male, yeah.
Thanks for bringing the patient in the center here. So I have a question regarding to sub-Q dosing. You mentioned a lot in diabetes, but what about oncology? I believe we are not there yet, so we are dosing IV. And is there any perspective on the patient side?
I mean, the perspective from the patient is what I was trying to bring out is like, ideally, they would like to have an administration device that they can do in their home setting. I didn't emphasize much on that because I know that there are molecules which it's very difficult to formulate them other than IV, and of course there will be always treatments that the patients will have to go to the hospital setting in order to administer them. But my point was, of course, to bring the patient mindset into the discussion and to make people realize that the best case scenario for the patient would be to stay at home and doing therapy, not having to go to the hospital. For oncology, I mean, I don't have that. I haven't done that research yet, so I cannot really give you an answer. But I mean, if we did already for other molecules, I'm hoping that in the future they will also come to oncology.
Yeah, thanks. Let me give you a few insights into our company. I'm from Merck, and we have this tough discussion because we have a lot of biologics in oncology, and yeah, it's not that easy because
Yes.
patients in oncology, they have low body weight. It's not easy to inject for them either. And at the end, what we always come up is the frequency matters. So if you have an IV dosing with every 6 weeks, it might be fine.
Yeah.
Well, going to hospital every 2 weeks is not acceptable. Then take-home medication might be the right way to go. So what I would like to mention with that, it's not black and white.
Yeah, of
it
course.
always depends on the patient population and the disease you're treating.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that it is about this, and also the technology. We have to work around the technologies. The formulation is there, for example, but of course the technology. You mentioned microneedles. Yeah, a lot of people, including myself, we work in microneedles. But if you think about that, we need an A4 microneedle pads at the moment to deliver the same amount of others. Do you want that in your body? I don't. And so this is the thing. Yeah, we have to work about the technologies mainly.
Yeah, so my goal was to do, of course, I did a high-level presentation, and to bring the patient perspective into it, we could go into a lot of details, but I would not have the time for that. So yeah, thanks anyway for your insights. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Oh, we have one other question, please. Yeah. Yeah.
What we see is that it is sometimes 1% of the cost, 50, like I think patient centricity is great, but we see sometimes favors what we don't expect. So it's favor an assembly of device, so that to mount the device, it's designed in two different ways to be flexible, and even some automation are complicated. But also the other, even healthcare practitioners play with the device. So some development we are giving, we need even to have like a mock device with training of practitioners for So I think it's great with patient-centric, but it brings another area of challenge.
Yeah.
We are not yet used to from structural standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning in the beginning. Also, the highly regulated environment that we live in. So we are getting there, but it will take still a lot of time to bring it, of course.
Yeah, it's not easy to convince some of the medical doctors to change what they're using for the last 40, 50 years. Yeah,
Exactly.
and going to new technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned training is really important to ensure that we have treatment effective. Yeah.
We can continue the discussions over coffees. Yeah, we have 20 minutes. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks.